What's going on? Mike Linden here. I am the director of video and social media content for the MyRadar weather app. We haven't done one of these in quite a while, a one-on-one between myself and somebody interesting, whether it be in the field of weather, science, or anything related to MyRadar. And I am so excited to talk to today's guest. You may have seen him before on all of the MyRadar platforms. He's been with the company, or a part of the company, I should say, for quite a while, and we love talking to him. He's just a ball of energy, this guy, and he really is a great source of some awesome information, let alone athletically, but botanically as well. Of course, I am talking about professional BMX racer Will Grant. Will, how are you today?
Man, I'm doing awesome. It's another beautiful day in Florida. The sun's shining, and hoping for some rain to come in because the garden's looking beautiful, and every time it rains, it just comes to life,
Of
man.
course, we're living in some wild times in the world where everybody's doing their
Yeah,
part, self-isolating, trying to flatten that curve. And I've got to imagine for someone like yourself that's put in a lot of work into something that we're just about to talk about here, that you are really reaping the benefits of
yeah,
growing your own food, right?
yeah, absolutely, man. It feels really good just to have that extra food security, I guess. People finally got a taste of what it feels like to maybe not quite sure if the grocery store is going to be open next week. So, I just got that feeling of ease that worst comes to worst. I got a bunch of food in my yard to feed me and the people I care about the most.
So I wanted to talk to you. I figured you would be the appropriate person to talk to about here when it just comes to gardening in general. Before we get to that, at what point in your life did you decide I'm going to convert my front and backyard, literally all the
Yeah.
property surrounding my house, into a place where I'm going to grow fruits, vegetables, what have you? When did you make that decision and why?
Well, I've always been interested in nutrition as far as like how can I eat as best as I can to feel the best. And it ended up, I actually got really injured where I broke a bunch of bones and, the doctors weren't sure of what the result was going to be. And the more I studied like healing, of course, nutrition and diet is so important to all of our lives. And the more I started to study nutrition, the more I just kept coming back to the more organic and quality that the food is grown, the quality of the food that you're going to get, and the higher nutrients that's going to feed and nourish your body, and the better you're going to feel. So I began to understand that if I really wanted to have control over what I'm eating, because there's not really a lot of good options for real organic grown in your area, knowing that those soils are high quality, there's not a lot of option in that. So I decided, well, might as well start to try to grow my own food. And then I was faced with a lot of difficulty at first. I was really unsuccessful. I failed a lot of times before I actually ended up getting it right, I guess you can say.
It's got to be, like you said, difficult to get started from literally just a blank kind of canvas, if you will, of your landscape to literally behind you. I see right over your shoulder something I assume that's
Yeah.
growing something that one day you're going to be able to eat off of it.
Yeah. It's this tree right here. It gives off little cherries that actually taste like peanut butters. Like, not even kidding. It's a peanut butter
How
tree.
about that? So
Yeah.
before we get into the hows, the how nots, the do's, the don'ts, some good tips, can you walk me through or talk about what do you have growing? If you can try to list them all, it's got to be a lot, but if you can try your best here,
Dude,
what do you have growing in the yard?
dude, it's so much. I'll give you a quick tour. All right. All right. So that's the peanut butter tree. We got aloe vera, caliandra, firebush, mulberry, a strawberry tree that gives off cherries that taste like cotton candy, avocado. These are a dwarf variety bananas that actually has a rack on there right now. Here's a mango tree from an actual mango that I've eaten, and I planted the seed. I just planted some zucchini and squash here. That's a hibiscus. I can't remember exactly what that one does actually, but that's a Suriname cherry that gives off these cherries that are so delicious. You have no idea. And that's a mango tree, coconut tree, yucca, Barbados cherry, which is actually a cherry tree that is just loaded with vitamin C. It's like taking a straight vitamin C shot straight into your body. And here's just a whole row of bananas. Look, you see I got a fat rack here. I got ice cream flavored, I got apple flavored, and I have that dwarf variety, and I have another variety that I can't remember the name, but it was the farmer's favorite who bred all these different varieties. I have a sweet almond there, And yeah, then I have another avocado tree right there. And you see I have about 4 or 5 big racks of bananas just almost ready to come. Oh, and I have some pineapples here. And these are just from pineapples that I actually ate at a grocery store. I cut the top and I put them in. Look, I even have a little pineapple coming in. Can you see that, Mike?
Yeah.
Yeah, see, there's a little pineapple coming in. And we actually harvested a pineapple a few months ago, and I'm not kidding. It was one of the best, juiciest, most flavor-filled pineapples I've ever had in my whole entire life.
All right, so that was a lot. And this is just the front
Yeah,
yard, right? Your backyard is
yeah,
loaded with even
yeah.
more.
Oh, yeah, this is just the front yard, and I have a ginger and turmeric bed right here with some lemongrass that I forgot to mention. And I have my whole backyard done, too, with even more plants, more varieties that won't even fit in the front yard, too. Oh, there's another spiraling ginger. Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff here. See, that's my dog. He's out currently. So my roommate's getting him because he's not supposed to be in the front yard.
To say the least, it's a lot. I mean, it truly is impressive. So, okay, we just went through a lot of varieties there. But of course, not everyone has the benefit of living in a climate like you that lives on the west coast of Florida. So let's
Exactly.
walk through some really easy ways for people in all of the agricultural zones in America or wherever you happen to live. What would you recommend is a great way for somebody to get started that maybe wants to start growing food in their yard? What do you
Yeah.
need?
Um, so there's two things. One is, take what you have and just start building that soil. One of the best ways to do it is taking your food scraps and just burying it or composting it. And the best possible way to do it is call a local tree company, and they are cutting trees all day. They're wood chipping it down, and they actually have to pay to drop it off. So for you to call them, it actually does them a favor, and that is the best organic biomass that you can put on your piece of dirt that's going to help build that soil and help build the nourishment in your soil. And instead of focusing on like the regular plants that you've heard of like, kale, broccoli, all of the annuals that really take a lot of work, that's where I struggled with the most is, planting the plants in the spring and then harvesting them in the fall. I focused more on plants that are called perennials, of more like trees and shrubs and vines and bushes, plants that are going to grow without you having to tend to them. And that where you plant it once and you set it and forget it and just let kind of nature do its thing. And so after you focus on building the soil, the next is finding the plants that you want and that grow the best in your area. And the best way to do that is to really just practice some mindfulness and being aware to looking around to seeing what things grow in your area, because that's extremely specific. And you can even ask a few local farmers, because I promise you they'll know as well too. And really, if you live in a place that doesn't freeze for over a day, you're pretty lucky that almost everything will grow. Almost everything will grow besides the specific variety of like fruit trees that need a winter, like an apple or stone fruits. And then if you do live in a place with a winter, those are just the plants that you focus on. So these methods, as far as just putting down the mulch and building the soil and then planting the plants, it works anywhere. The only thing that is changing is the mulch or the wood chip is very importantly, but it's to your area, because it's the wood chips of those local trees that actually break down into that best dirt, because the trees have been sourcing the perfect nutrients for your climate and that specific soil for hundreds or thousands of years. So that broken down is going to create the best soil that you can possibly get. And then just focusing on the plants that grow in your area. And those two things, just have fun with it. Get your hands in the dirt and plant the plants that you want. And sometimes they work out and sometimes they don't. Just keep building that soil and finding plants that you want to vibe with and put them in the dirt.
So it's almost like thinking about, when it comes to the mulching process, thinking about it in terms of something like honey, right? Where in honey, you're going to get bees that are pollinating these flowers that are local to the area. So am I right in that line of thinking to assume that the wood chips from the area are only going to work well in your area?
Yeah, exactly. 100%. See, like, that's why a lot of people will go to like the Home Depot and buy that dyed mulch, which is not only loaded with a bunch of chemicals, but it's not really the good stuff. The good stuff is actually the free stuff. And that's from the local tree companies who are cutting in your area, because like I said, those trees have perfected, especially for example, Florida. So our like home species is that oak, or that pine. They've been um, perfecting this climate and perfecting this soil for hundreds of thousands of years. And when you break that down, it's just going to almost fast forward what nature is already doing every fall.
That's amazing. So, just to break it down even more again, mulch. What
Mulch.
specifically is mulch? It's the stuff you mix into the soil. You put it on top when you put a plant or a seed in the ground. What specifically is mulch? We talked about how important it is, but what
Yeah.
specifically is it? We're
Okay.
breaking it
So
down.
mulch.
Explain to me like I'm five.
Okay. Mulch can be almost anything. If you look at how nature does it, every fall or every winter, all the sticks and leaves, they fall. And that's what creates that mulch, that sponge effect that holds that moisture in and that breaks down into that perfect soil for that area. So all mulch is essentially is organic material that is breaking down, that is over your dirt. You do not want to keep your soil exposed. Soil exposed to the sun actually just kills the soil. So you want to do it the way nature does it, and they cover it with that layer of sticks and leaves or just broken down organic material. So that's why I call on the local tree companies who are cutting down that organic material to shape the plants like the way we want them shaped. And they put that through a machine that chips it down into these tiny little pieces that, again, just fast forward what nature is already doing. And then that's perfect. You can lay that right over your soil, and that's going to create that sponge that keeps the moisture in, protects your soil, much like the skin does for us.
Interesting. So now, if somebody was doing like a raised bed or growing something out of a pot, would you want to apply the same thought to that? Would you want to put mulch around the plant or like over top of the
Yeah.
seed? How does that work?
So it's a lot more difficult when you're doing it in pots. So like I like to just try to align my methods with what nature's already doing so I don't have to work harder, but I kind of just do the initial investment of time and then nature does most of the work. So the more steps you take after that, then the more steps you're going to have to take because you're doing something a little bit different than what nature is already doing, like putting it in a pot or a raised bed. Raised beds help too. I've seen a lot of people instead of mulch because it's a little bit more difficult to dig. But like the raised beds are mainly for those annuals that you're planting in the spring and then you're going to be harvesting in the fall, which take a lot more extra work, which you can do, but most likely. If you've had breaking down mulch that's been breaking down for a while, you can use, but if not, you'll probably gonna have to buy the artificial, or not the artificial, but the less organic dirt at the Home Depot or something like that. So what we do is just build the soil we already got and let nature do its thing.
Okay, so far I'm just trying to understand everything. Annuals
Yeah.
are going to require more attention on an annual basis. You only get to harvest
Yeah.
them once. Where on the other
Yep.
hand, perennials, I would have to guess from the name, the reason why it has its name, you plant it and perennially you don't have to worry about it at all. It's just going to
Yep.
continue to give you uh
Fruit or some sort of value, because there are some plants that I have on in my front yard and backyard that don't necessarily feed me, but they feed the local organisms in my environment that help make my garden thrive. Like, for example, I have plants like the sweet almond or the calliandra that give off a really pretty flower, and that pretty flower gives off a really pretty scent, and that pretty flower and pretty scent attracts beneficial birds and pollinators and predator bugs that eat the bad bugs. And they're pretty flowers, so they attract the babes too, which I'm all about.
So, what about growing something underground? I mean, for people that maybe don't want to necessarily have stuff growing, above ground, getting tall and potentially taking over a portion of their yard. I mean, I've got to imagine things like potatoes or ginger, something like that,
Yeah.
have got to be a good solution for people.
Yeah, but all plants that I know about, they need sun to survive. So something is going to come out of the ground. So those plants like ginger and turmeric and potatoes, they're growing in the rhizomes in the dirt, but they take leaves that actually come up and, get some attention for the sun. And I know sweet potato, they actually produce really pretty flowers that, that attract the bees, but they actually produce like a spinach like leaf that I know a lot of my Asian friends use as like spinach. But like this is a ginger and turmeric bed right here. And I actually just cut all of the top to feed it back into the soil. But you see, it has little sprouts that come out, because it needs that sun. Because I'm not, exactly sure the science of it. I'm sure some of your friends do, but I know that plants use something with the sun to create photosynthesis, and then in the dirt, and that's how they create the energy that gives us, the good stuff.
Right. So, okay. So we've gone over perennials, annuals, mulching. What about water? Of course, we have the benefit of living in Florida where you're going to go through a wet season. And I would have to imagine for perennials, you're doing little to no watering at all. But for somebody that lives elsewhere in any of the other zones in the United States, is there such a thing as too much water or too little water? What's the right amount to be sure that you are going to get the best yield from whatever you're planting?
Well, when it comes to water, it all depends on how good your soil is and how good your mulch is. Man, it really does. Who waters the forest? Nobody, right? Like there's all these plants that grow by themselves and you don't have to water them. You don't have to fertilize them. And that's because they mulch themselves. And then if you have mulch, especially when we first laid our mulch, we laid almost like 6 to 12 inches of mulch. And through one summer, it broke down to maybe 4 or 5 inches. But that is a whole sponge that if it goes months without raining, it's holding in that moisture. So really the only time that I water or have to water is when I'm first planting a plant. I like to water it in just to make sure it's going to really set roots and thrive. But even then, I don't have to. It just higher my percentage of success. And then during the winter, like I could never water this at all if I wanted to because it's been mulched for over like 2 years. And once you get to that point of where you have mulch for over 2 years, that soil is so good and that mulch has been there for so long. It has its whole fungi network to transfer the nutrients, to transfer the water, to transfer everything that it needs, that the input is very minimal. But maybe at first, to help hurry up that process, you can water. And the more you water it, I guess, the quicker that it's all going to happen, because that water breeds life. That's why, especially like a Florida summertime is like Florida is one of the best places to grow plants, and even like a place like Costa Rica, because it's so hot, so humid, and so rainy and so wet. That water just breeds life. But you could live in a place that is a completely drought, that only rains a few months a year. And if you have this mulching system from that good organic mulch, and it's been sitting there for over a year or two, like this is an investment. But once you do, then you almost never have to water it unless you just want to give it a supercharge.
So what would be the investment of time? Because I would imagine that this isn't going to be an instantaneous thing unless you're starting with a tree or a plant that is pretty close to being mature, I guess. But what it would be your typical turnaround time between planting something in your yard to bearing fruit, for lack of a better term?
Well, that depends 100% on how much money you have and how much you're wanting to invest, because you can buy trees that are already, about ready to fruit, and you could pay for a professional like this guy from Florida. His name is Pete Canaris from Green Dreams, like to come to your house and he'll install this whole thing in less than a week, and you'll be pumping out all sorts of fruits in a matter of months. And then in 6 months, it'll be really just ripping. But we really didn't spend that much money, and we did all the work ourselves, and we actually enjoyed that process of laying down the mulch and planting the plants. But really, the more money you have, and like you can pay somebody to do it for you and it just happens quicker. But we were really taking our time with it. So like I said, it could take a month if you just install it and put in that investment right away, or it could take a longer time, depending on how much you put time and money into it. It's like anything, the more you put in, the more you're going to get out, if that's investment, if that's time, and the quicker that's going to happen as well. But like, if you just set back and don't do anything, to your yard, nature will kind of start to do this by itself. It just takes a long time.
So we've already kind of gone over some good tips, and it seems like as far as a traditional shortcut goes, it's going to be hard to kind of get ahead of nature. But do you have any?
There's a lot of shortcuts. Yeah.
Okay. So do you have any shortcuts or tips that you would recommend? I know you just touched on before when you showed the pineapple that you just cut off a pineapple at the top of it, at least from a grocery store, and you're already yielding fruit from that. And you said the mango started from a grocery store mango as well.
Yeah.
So what are some really simple tips, or could you use an avocado pit to then grow more avocado? I mean, it seems like there's so many kind of shortcuts.
Yeah, there really is. So for example, this avocado tree right here, so bananas, they like a lot of water and a lot of nutrients. So we're always composting with the bananas, just bearing, our food scraps around the bananas, or sometimes even just throwing it too. And this is for me walking out of my front yard and just throwing an avocado seed. It's grown its own avocado tree, But that being said, avocados are something else, because if you're buying the Haas avocados that are grown in Mexico, that seed could take 7 years, and a percentage of it actually giving a solid fruit is kind of low, because it's just a low quality avocado that's grown in Mexico with a bunch of chemicals and pesticides, and it's really not true to form. It's kind of like a GMO, I guess you could say. But if you take this avocado right here, that's an actual Florida avocado, yeah, you could just take that seed, put it right in the dirt, and it's going to grow by itself, because those avocados are perfectly bred for this area. But honestly, I mean, the best tips is just, one, lay that mulch, start building your soil, because that is not only going to help benefit you, but that's going to help benefit the whole earth. I think they're saying that we have about 30 to 60 years left of farmable soil, and that's just because, the way that we're farming now, we're taking all of the nutrients out and, without really putting it back. And the mulch is just going to help nourish your soil and make your soil more rich, so your possibilities become more and more. So just start building that soil, lay that mulch. It's completely free. And 2 is just start experimenting, planting different plants. Some are going to be a success, some are not going to be a success, but find seeds that you get from friends, who can find cuttings. Go to your local nursery, go to your local farmer, go to your local farmer's market. Like I go to a produce stand that sells fruits and vegetables, and sells plants that even sell those fruits and vegetables. So just look around and be mindful and be aware, because if you just start thinking that way, things will start to come up in your sight, and then you'll start to recognize it. But you have to first just open your eyes of, okay, hey, I want to start planting different plants in my front yard and building that soil.
I mean, it's so many great tips to really take in. But is there do you have any advice for somebody to maybe not get discouraged? Because I would have to imagine that some folks out there are going to say, I don't have a green thumb. Everything I plant just always dies. I have terrible luck. Do you have a recommendation maybe for a more simple kind of foolproof fruit vegetable, maybe growing herbs or something like that? Is there something that's really simple to do that even for people that have bad luck will be able to yield some good results?
If you plant the plants that are meant to grow in your area, you'll have good luck. It becomes really difficult when you're starting to plant plants that aren't really meant to grow in your area. But if you're finding the natives, and if you're finding, from the farmers, like the second generations of seeds, and, if you're going out and just searching and, and just playing with it, don't be discouraged by failure, because, the more you can learn to dance with your garden, the more you're going to be able to learn to dance with everything in this world, because we're all going by the same rules, and if you're having trouble, to just be the observer and observe what that garden is doing, because it's growing and it's transforming, and you'll learn more lessons about life just from sitting back and observing that garden. And then most likely, if you're having a lot of trouble, you just need to sit back and be the observer. And the way we do one thing is the way we do everything. It's just going to help us to be able to don't be discouraged by, oh, I'm a failure, but stop and say, like, okay, well, what can I learn from this? What am I not seeing that the earth or the universe is trying to tell me to play by those laws or play by those rules. And that's going to pour into every single area of your whole entire life. But yeah, I mean, so if you're frustrated, just keep trying. Like, enjoy the process of learning something new, because every single day, one of the most beautiful things, and this is an awesome tip just to keep your mind fresh, is every single day when you walk out this garden, it's different. It's never the same thing. And when you're always seeing different patterns, that keeps the brain fresh, and that keeps the mind and body just ready to go, even as you get older. And every single day, there's new sticks, there's new leaves, there's new bugs, there's new life, and like, just sit back and enjoy it, observe, and it's going to help you in more ways than just feeding yourself.
That's it's amazing. A garden can teach you so much about life. Ironically enough,
it's so many philosophers and everyone from like presidents, from Benjamin Franklin to like to famous philosophers. They've all a lot of them have kept huge gardens just to sit back and meditate and observe, because they're learning how the world works.
It's truly amazing. So before we wrap things up here, Will, I've got to imagine that, and I've seen your Instagram stories before. I've seen how much fruit, how many vegetables you yield at one time. Of course, these are perishables, right? So you can't just be eating, unless you are, pounds upon pounds upon pounds of bananas in a single day. What would you say is the best way to store some of these perishable foods to make them last longer?
Okay, so there is a lot of good storing methods that I'm honestly not the best at yet. Like, I haven't really been experimenting with too many storage methods, but I know that you could dry fruit, you could pickle them, you could do all sorts of different methods that I honestly can't touch too much on, man. What I've been doing is just sharing them with as many people as I can. So I get an excess of bananas, I get an excess of papayas. I'm sharing it with as many friends and family as I possibly can, getting them to start being motivated to start building their soil and planting some plants. And then if there's an excess and it goes back, I just feed it right back to the soil.
That's a great way of doing things, especially in this time with the self-isolation and everybody trying to, stay safe and things like that, to be able to keep that distance, maybe drop some food off at your friend's house, ring the doorbell, leave, let them know, hey, I left some stuff on your doorstep.
They love it.
Yeah, that's got to be pretty awesome.
Yeah. But that's definitely something that I could learn a lot more about, is, it's just the storage factor to kind of get more shelf life out of all the things that I do grow.
So there's always something when it comes to the garden. You're always learning.
Oh, I am by no means like an expert. Is just every season you learn something else. You know what I'm saying? So next season, every, winter and every single summer and spring and fall teaches you more lessons, that go so much deeper than the garden. And, I know after 50 seasons, I'm going to know a heck of a lot more than what I know now, because it's just nonstop lessons from lessons and lessons from this garden.
It's amazing. All right. So to wrap things up, to kind of put a bow on it, right? Mulch is the most important by everything that we've talked about. Mulch and local mulch is the most important thing that you can have for your garden. Yeah,
because it's free. And it's the best stuff with the nourishment, and they've perfected the climate already.
So for somebody in let's just say a manicured backyard where it's just a lawn, where are you going to get mulch from that kind of lawn or backyard?
You just devote a square, you know what I mean? Like, even if it's a small 10 by 10 square, the best way to do it is to pull out the grass, but that can be a lot of labor intensive work. So you can just lay a layer of cardboard over it and then just pour the mulch right over it, and it'll just start building that soil just like that. And you could even put, if you want to do a raised bed, like some wood around it just to create a nice border. But yeah, it's that simple. You do have to be careful with one thing. Like, when you start to call the tree companies, just be specific with where and how you want them to drop the mulch. And if you're specific, then they'll drop it exactly where you want it and how you want it. But if not, then they might drop it in somewhere that you like to park.
Okay. So if you had to choose, what would you say is your favorite? I'm sure you change all the time. What would you say is your most favorite thing that you are growing right now?
Oh, it changes every time depending on what's fruiting. Man, them ice cream bananas are hard to beat, brother. Those ice cream bananas are absolutely delicious.
I just the name alone. I mean, it makes you think of, an ice cream sundae or a banana split or
Yeah,
something like
yeah,
that.
like you freeze them and they literally taste like ice cream.
Amazing. Will, this has been great. I mean, we just spent 30 minutes talking about, we didn't even mention BMX even one time, and that's your full-time
crazy.
gig.
That's crazy, man. But yeah, man. I mean, I cannot wait because pretty much about the time that all this Corona craziness hopefully can clear up, I'll be back on the bike and I'll be back on the track. And I'm excited. I've been taking my training and my physical therapy pretty seriously and doing everything I can to feel my best and to come back on that bike and on that track as strong as I can.
And I forgot to mention off of the top here, you can follow Will on all of the social media platforms that you can think of. Will is everywhere. He has a YouTube channel as well. We at MyRadar have put together a short little documentary about Will's kind of life to like get started from his teenage years to where he is today, sitting in his front yard growing papayas and guavas and all sorts of fruits you probably have never heard of. It's truly a remarkable journey. Will, is there anything else that you would like to mention that we may not necessarily have touched on?
No, man, I think we pretty much covered it. I really want to thank you and everyone at MyRadar for just giving me the opportunity to work with you guys. You guys are awesome, and get outside, plant some plants, and don't forget to check MyRadar because it tells you if you got a water or rain or anything if you want to plant. So
You're the best, Will. Thank you so much again. And for everyone watching at home, remember, if you haven't already, subscribe to the MyRadar YouTube channel. We're giving away a smartphone at 70,000, 80,000, 90,000, and 100,000 subscribers. We've got new giveaways and contests coming all the time on all of our social media platforms, so follow us there. You don't want to miss it. And remember to click on that notification bell. That way you always know whenever we drop a new video. For Will and for all of us at MyRadar, have an awesome rest of your day. We'll see you back here next time.